All right, cool. So we're recording. This is an attempt at, episode 1, but I asked you guys if you would be willing to talk and try to start a podcast. And this is sort of on the topic of just like mentorship in general, but right now I kind of wanted to focus on mentorship in Final Fantasy and just kind of like see what y'all's experiences has been with this, because like I feel like I blinked a long time ago, and now mentorship kind of looks like it's kind of been tarnished or diminished in a way. So what have the two of you sort of observed in this whole like mentor landscape in the game?
Uh, I feel like people are just kind of going in just to go get the shiny mount out of doing the mentor roulettes, honestly. Like, people just kind of jumped out of it. They do it
Yeah,
just because it's a shiny title at this point, in my opinion.
yeah, right.
Yeah, most
When
people with the crown just have it on as a reward.
mm-hmm,
They have no interest in actually explaining mechanics to people.
right, because when I saw the like when you accept it and when you turn your crown back on and stuff, like you get that little disclaimer, right? It's like, hey, you're going to be helpful. This is all about, trying to make like the community a little better and help newer people who don't know a lot of the stuff that happens in this game. And it's like 10 years worth of content nowadays. So, you know, I think overall, when Rin told me you're the first mentor that I've come across that's actually been helpful, like that struck me like it never left me, because like what the hell? That was the whole point. Nowadays just like what is happening? Like there's just a lot, and then with the influx of Xbox players and stuff, it just kind of makes me wonder how all this is gonna go overall. Um, but yeah, it's just to see a mentor crown and then think, oh man, they're gonna be difficult, or it kind of reminds me of like ultimates in a way, right? When you look at a weapon, you wonder if that person really earned it.
Every time I see someone with an ultimate title in a roulette, they proceed to stand in something immediately.
Right?
You're not
All
wrong,
the
Panda.
time.
I see it all the time as well.
Yep.
Like, you honestly start to wonder, you're like, oh, they got Ultimate Legend. Yeah, and then you watch them stand in everything to follow.
Everything.
Yeah. You're just like, did they? Like, who's actually a real one now? And it makes the landscape look a little grayer, and you can't tell. But yeah, in that's kind of the worry, right? Is like, if this is a prevalent thing and it continues that way, then it can get to a point where it's just like no one ends up being helpful. No one takes the time to be kind and just teach people about it. And there's so much in this that, like, even when we were helping the new person to the FC, just the vast amount of information that we just hold because we know it and we play it so much, like it's very hard to kind of start this game without that kind of support. So it's just, I find it to be sort of very important to even have these conversations and sort of share that for people who might be looking for this stuff,
There's a lot
Like,
of
what do you?
things the game does not explain to you. I think I
Uh-huh.
played for 2 months as a sprout before someone explained to me that if a debuff has a white line on it, that I can assume it. No one told
Right.
me.
You're not wrong, because I spent the longest time trying to figure out why do I have an interrupt as a tank until
Mm-hmm.
literally I went across the Reddit post that said, "Hey, it's the red glowing line that you're supposed to interrupt." And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yep.
who actually tells you this?
Nobody at all. And now it's like, yeah, I kind of hate to admit this, but it's like when we get into a dungeon or whatever and we hear or see like viewing cutscene, I'm almost filled with a little bit of dread. Because I'm wondering, not only, okay, they don't know the fight, or they might not know the fight, but will they also be open to learning something, right? Because they could also get people that are completely closed off to it, and they don't want any advice, and they just kind of want to do their thing and skip through it all.
Yeah, you don't pay my sub is like their favorite saying when
Yeah,
they do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and you're like, how do you navigate that? How do you work with that?
Jay, when you do a mentor roulette and you zone in, do you start explaining mechanics to people immediately, or do you wait?
Oh, I wait.
Yeah, I wait too. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
actually usually wait until there's a full wipe, and then I start talking about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Wait
how
for
we
the
just kept
opportunity.
killing zombies in the level 50. Guys, stop killing zombies, and we just keep killing the group.
Now
Yeah,
that's what
right.
I've given up on because no one will listen to those mechanics, and I'll
No.
just heal through it
Is
or
that the
try to
one
heal through it.
where you need to like move the AoE to kill the zombies and not?
Hawking Manor
Yep,
hard,
yep.
Yeah,
second boss. Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah.
I've had a couple of those where they'll just kill the zombies, and it's 10 stacks of
Oh.
vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, great.
And see, that's the thing is like you have to sort of wait for that opportunity because you know they might not want to hear it in the very beginning, right? Um.
Another great suggestion, another great one is when
Mhm.
Panda and I were running this sunken city, I think it is,
Mhm.
and the tank just kept pulling the 3 or 4 pack mob there, which is
Yes.
fine, but
Uh-huh.
he kept misusing his cooldowns and kept standing in AoEs, and we kept telling him, "Hey man, you have to use your cooldowns properly, or we're not surviving this." I think it was like 8 pulls before the tank just
Mhm.
finally gave up. They didn't even do the pull after that; just pulled one group at a time.
Yeah. It's like you have to crash and burn for you to adjust, and then some of them don't adjust, and they think like it's okay to do this or it's supposed to be done that way. Um, I think I was in like Alamiga or something, right? Or the one where you work your way up to I think Xenos. There's like a lot of
Yes.
flooding and stuff. Um, this guy pulled like I want to say 5 different packs and stuff, including where there's barrages of things you have to dodge, and it's just what are you doing, right? So I tried to help or whatever, but there was a few more crits than were anticipated or something that could be handled and healed through. So he died. And I was explaining, this is an opportunity, right? So I was trying to let him know. I was like, hey, a good try, but maybe that's too much, right? And he kept it really simple. Not going to get into anything. And, you don't pay my sub is sort of what that kind of felt like, where it was just like a lot of silence. But what happens, he reses, runs to the thing. I barely get there in time, and proceeds to pull everything again. Now, it's a little more like a little less in terms of the enemies because we kind of like thinned it out a bit and we survived. But what makes you think it's a good idea to continue doing that without communication? Like, so it's an interesting landscape that I think we find ourselves in that has promoted this. It inspired me to kind of like ask you guys to talk about it with me because we're usually obviously helping people or running through content that I feel like we don't really get a chance to really just make a space to just chat about it, given we're all experiencing these things at the same time. Like, just stop doing that. If you died, you think you would learn to not do that again.
You'd think. And unfortunately, too, I think definitely with a lot of WoW players that came at the time, they all just kept the same mentality from World of Warcraft of, why are you here? Why aren't you doing good? And they can just badmouth you and think it's okay.
Yeah.
Which then will push away the sprouts who want to learn to tank, who want to learn to heal, because you got the mentors who came from WoW acting like that.
Yeah. You were saying, Panda?
I think I've had relatively good luck in mentor roulettes. People certainly, you can tell when it's an Xbox or a WoW player because
Totally.
they don't have the same cadence of pulls, right? So one thing I see all the time is they'll pull one pack and say it has 5 mobs. We'll kill 4 of them, and there's still a mob left, and then they start running on to the next pack, which is just not how anybody does it in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, sort of that staggered pull.
Yeah. That's an M plus. It's a Mythic plus pull.
Oh yeah.
Actually, that's a good point too. Is that as you guys are still playing WoW and doing Mythics, that level of difficulty, you definitely get to see that difference between both populations, right? And how they take on a dungeon or they take on content. But yeah, it's interesting to me that you bring up the sort of stagger pull of things, because one thing that I used to suggest to people when they wanted to learn to tank is to stagger pull a little bit if they wanted to make it feel less blocky, less like, doing the no flow to it. So I was like, well, if they're dwindling in health, some of your mob packs or whatever, then maybe, take it to the next one. But yeah, they don't seem to do it here. It's just like, this is 1 or 2 sections, we're finishing this, we're moving on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess even though we don't see it much, do you think like it would work pretty well over here if people adopted it more?
No, because as you know, a white mage main, I'm casting holy.
Yep.
And the stagger pull doesn't really work because the enemies aren't necessarily going to move.
Right.
And you have AoE effects like Doton or Slipstream, and
right.
I already have a problem with people pulling stuff out of those ground attacks.
This is true. Yeah.
People don't like to listen.
They don't like to listen, and then maybe the game in the way that they have created or designed their spells does not really support that strategy.
Almost every dungeon you pull to a closed door, right? You can't, with some exceptions, you can't pull more than 2 packs. It's really designed around a 2-pack pull.
Yeah, right. And that's, I think, from us running dungeons so much, it's just, it's always going to be 2-pack boss, like some form of that, right? And it rarely will move away from that unless there's like a huge thing like Mount Golg and there's like a big number of packs. But yeah, go ahead.
But how often do you really see healers who are okay with trying to do a Mount Gold pull? Very few in my
right
when I do it.
I had a gunbreaker do that to me when I was on stage.
Oh
no! We lived. It worked. He was good, and we survived. He did not ask me if he was going to do that. He just did it.
Right.
Which I was a little annoyed by, but we survived.
And that's something that's a topic in itself, is like the consent factor, right? Because you're not playing this game by yourself. This is not a JRPG where you make the rules as you go and stuff. So it's like, at least on the account of like being a team sort of experience in the dungeon, like you gotta work with people and sort of be somewhat accountable, right? Or at least you would hope. But a lot of like, there's the absence of that in your example, that this gunbreaker didn't ask you anything. He just ran.
I'd say it's about 1 out of every 100 dungeons I run, the tank will ask me how big they should pull. Right. It's pretty uncommon.
It's very uncommon. Even as me, I don't ask healers. I just go, which is honestly not a good thing, because you do have the sprout healer who's like, "Hey, I can't actually handle this. Please slow down."
Right.
And it's something huge that a lot of groups have to learn of. Hey, maybe ask the healer what they think.
And that's the thing, is that like, my hope in talking about these sort of things, right, and being able to share it to people who might end up listening to it or whatever, or just even being a thing where it's just a space for us to talk about it at least, and we have it, is that people would be a little bit more considerate in that fact of like, okay, you might be doing this one way, but maybe you didn't maybe consider it this other way, right? And even this is a good example of that, is that you even admitted, Crack, that you do this and maybe I shouldn't, but also having the capacity to understand that you can do it a different way, or you can be wrong, and that's fine, right? I feel like a lot of people, just when they feel like they're wrong, have a sense of pride that envelops them. They can't even get themselves to that point of even admitting, much less change the behavior. So yeah, I just want to be able to kind of, I guess, have our wealth of knowledge from everything that we've learned, both in MMOs in general and also the very different ones, and then get into even the nuance of Final Fantasy stuff, to just leave it out there as something that, hey, maybe this could help somebody, be a little more kind or more considerate.
So here's one thing that I was wrong about, is that as I started, so I'm at 194 mentor roulettes now.
Yeah.
And when I started doing them, I treated them just like any other dungeon. I went in and I did holy spam and I let tanks get real low before tossing a benediction on them.
Yep.
And that's not the right way to do a mentor roulette. And so now I'm still, holy's a lot of mitigation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of damage. But I'm way less aggressive about it and I babysit the tanks more. And I think that's led to more success in those mentor roulettes.
Right.
I will definitely say that unless you know the tank, it's definitely not a way to go about it. And I'm the same way, because I can look at you and go like, okay, I know Panda can heal me through pretty much anything. I'm going to wall and go crazy.
Yeah. You have that relationship. You have that understanding of what their skill set is and what they're capable of. So there's that trust factor. Plus, you guys do mythics together. So, I mean, much like how all of us are in deep dungeons and stuff, we just know how we play. And that becomes like a benefit and something you can lean on. Yeah.
Until Panda starts yelling at me to stop pulling so goddamn much.
And that's part of that communication, right? It's like, hey, I'm not ready for this or whatever, or it's not a good time right now based on whatever Panda is handling. He's going to communicate that to you. So, but yeah, there's a lot to be said, I think, with what Panda was mentioning on how he's approaching mentor roulettes, and that you're kind of there too, baby people, right? You're going to see how they play and make adjustments because you know you can, right? You can adjust to pretty much anything, and that's why you're a mentor. And at least having that approach of being willing to adjust. Like, I know there's that meme of, okay, healers adjust, blah, blah, but like, there's truth to the fact that, you have all these skills and all this experience. You are probably, like, you adjusting is probably the best thing you can do for a mentor duty wherever it throws you.
That's right.
So, the more people that we have doing that have played this game long enough and stuff, I feel like it just makes for a better overall experience for the people that are, new to this and all that. And when you take the time to do that for people, I think you get a better community out of it. And as proud as I am of this community and, what it is for a lot of people, there's always room to be better. And it's always something that's nice to strive for anyway. And we all spend so much time in this game, so why not make it a pleasant place? Like, I feel like that's just, kind of where I want to go with these podcasts even, right? It's just like, let's just throw that out there so that people know, hey, there's a better way to doing this, probably a different way of doing this. Like, start a discussion and at least keep it on the brain so that it's not, not something where we just fall into like a fairly like toxic way of doing things. But yeah, that's what I'd say is just, man, I want to have more discussions like this. Like, I don't know about you guys, but we've been going for 18 and a half minutes right now, and I'm liking this. Like, I'm liking to be able to just like talk to you guys about these subjects and stuff.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly.